Hello and welcome to my review of Management Studio. My name is Peter Von Oven, and in this, the second in a series of 5 videos, I'm going to start to focus on the 4Cs methodology that I introduced back in the first video, and how Management Studio provides you with an enterprise class software platform to deliver transformation as a process and be your companion throughout the lifecycle of your project and way beyond. As I did in the first video, I'm going to continue with my "a project is like a book" analogy and get straight into the first chapter, where in a book you are introduced to the main characters, their background and the plot, all in anticipation of telling the story. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do in the first stage of the project and what it's going to deliver. The characters in this case are your users, the background is what they're running, so that your devices, your apps, your operating systems, etc. And the plot, well, the plot is the project objective, what you're setting out to achieve. But let's just hope there's no plot twists along the way. With this in mind, I'm going to give you a deeper overview of the capture methodology. Capture is arguably one of the most important project phases, as it builds a comprehensive picture in helping you understand your environment today, and is, as you will see, a unique feature of the Management Studio solution, in that there is no need for you to become Sherlock Holmes to have to go and find data and information that you need, as Management Studio does all the detective work for you. So how do we get started? Well, in my case, I was granted access via an email, having had an account created for me by one of the Management Studio team. This was to a demo platform, and I am then immediately greeted by 2 of the other 4 Cs. Communication, I received an email, and an invite to collaborate on this particular project. In that welcome email was my username. I could go and set my password and then download the Management Studio client. I download the client and then I'm able to log in. Very much pretty straightforward and a quick process to get up and running. As I've highlighted previously with the Management Studio capture methodology, capture will collect all the required information about your users, devices, applications and so on. It does this using what Management Studio calls a connector, which automates the collection of data so as to ensure its accuracy and to provide a single source of truth from where all projects can start from. It's so called a connector as it connects to your environment, but not just via a single connection method. Management Studio not only supports on-premises domains and of course Azure AD, as you can see in the screenshot, it can also capture data from things like SCCM or Intune as well. But more interestingly, I found a couple of other connector types that I wasn't quite expecting to find, but are equally excellent sources of information. I'm not going to focus on the obvious ones for now, but instead I'm going to pick on the ones that are a bit more unique. And I'm going to start with Lakeside SysTrack. If you're not familiar with Lakeside and its SysTrack solution, it is typically used to gain insight into your end user computing environment, providing real-time monitoring of endpoints, enabling fast resolution of issues that all affect the end user experience. I also wanted to spend some time discussing the next option on the menu, ACE AI. Given AI is a hot topic, not surprisingly, here's an AI option listed in the drop-down of the connectors. ACE in this instance refers to Asset Confidence Engine, a unique feature of the Management Studio solution. In a nutshell, what it does is to manage the unwieldy number of apps an organisation is likely to have by rationalising the number of them. One thing I've learned over the years is that I've never really come across a customer who knows exactly how many apps they have deployed. While you might say, for example, you have 1,000 apps, that usually refers to maybe the high-level unique application names, so Word, Excel, PowerPoint and so on. But how many different versions of that same application do you have? Maybe 10, maybe more. As each version is an application entity in its own right, the application count can quickly rocket. If within your 1,000 apps you've got, say, 10 versions of Word and 10 versions of Excel, you're now looking at 10,000 applications. But the question is, how quickly can you rationalise these apps and work out what you need, and more importantly, what you don't need? So how does it work? Although I would not technically describe this feature as a source of data capture, I just want to take some time to explore what ACE AI is in a bit more detail, given that it is unique and what it delivers above and beyond any spreadsheet could ever dream of. I guess it falls under the connector heading as you connect to a thing called an ACE server. ACE.io can reduce the number of applications by collecting application information from other ManagementStudio customers that also configure the same feature. This effectively removes months and months of manual effort and labour. One thing I do want to call out is all data is collected anonymously. Only app names, vendor, and the rationalisation decision are captured. Nothing personal or anything identifying is captured. This allows each customer to approve or reject apps that are used, meaning you can quickly rationalise your app estate, removing those apps or app versions that are no longer used. It gives you what is referred to as a confidence level, which in turn enables you to make decisions that impact delivery from day one. Doing this before you start a project is essential, as you don't go into a project trying to deal with applications that are out of scope and are not actually going to be used in the first place. Therefore, ACE AI will assist in rationalising your application estate, as you can approve or reject apps based on those confidence ratings. There's a lot more to this feature that I can cover in this review, but just to finish off, it's important to point out that the automation elements of this feature. You can automatically accept recommendations and base those recommendations on app versions and whether they are major, minor, or just literally a different build number. If you have discovered apps that you haven't yet decided on, and as a result these will show under pending, then you can automate what happens if you forget and just leave them there, and what happens in a set period of time. You can opt to rationalise to either a newer version, go to a lower version, or just reject it full stop. So I've talked mainly about apps, but the OS is in scope too. One thing that I also want to point out is that you can also do this for the OS, checking with the vendor what the support is or security update status is for that particular OS. And finally, before I wrap up on ACE AI, I wanted to highlight that this process can be configured to run continuously at scheduled intervals. This in effect delivers a fully automated app and OS lifecycle management solution. And I've said many times before, ManagementStudio is a transformation as a process solution. It's not just another point project management tool. There's one final connector that also sounds interesting that I just want to touch on, and it's called Housekeeping. Exactly as the name suggests, Housekeeping basically sends in a maid to clean out obsolete data, giving you the confidence that the account status of users in all data sources is reflected in ManagementStudio. As with ACE AI, it too isn't really a natural data collection process. In fact, it's the opposite, in that it cleanses the data or it removes data by archiving accounts or devices when they're inactive, disabled, or deleted. And not surprisingly, it can be automated, so you can choose when this housekeeping happens. So I've described the automated process for capturing data, but what if there's information you already have and stuff that you won't find in a directory service or anything an assessment tool won't pick up? What if you've used legacy methods of recording data or have output from some other solution and that data has been saved as maybe a spreadsheet or can be output as a CSV spreadsheet? Does it mean you have to type all of that in by hand? No, absolutely not. ManagementStudio has an import data feature. This allows you to import specific sets of data such as applications, devices, contacts. The important thing to remember here, and another feature of ManagementStudio, is that data doesn't just get dumped, it gets fully integrated. So information and data get mapped to the correct location. So as you can see, device information, user information, application information goes in the relevant fields. But there's one other very important source of information, and that is the people that use your systems and applications day in, day out. Having worked with end-user computing technology for longer than I care to remember, I've always been a huge advocate of involving the consumers of the technology you're about to deploy for them at an early stage, as well as ensuring continuous conversations take place. We'll talk about that later on. While all these capture tools are great for collecting physical data, there's absolutely no substitute for talking to real people. They'll be able to give you a complete insight of how they work, what they use. In short, your workforce will add the context around the data that you capture. For example, typically directory services, they're not always up to date or complete. I mean that all the fields of information aren't always populated, and particularly when it comes to things like contact details, location of where they work, etc. So how do you know where people work from? Are they at home? Multiple office locations? Something else? By speaking to real people, you have the factual, straight from the horse's mouth information, as consulting with employees not only makes them feel included in the project, but they can also give you a full insight into the way that they work. Maybe the apps they have don't actually fit their role. Maybe the apps don't perform well enough. No point in migrating these resources if they're not the right resources in the first place. So I'm going to look at how Management Studio captures information from the user community and how this is achieved by the use of dynamic forms. Dynamic in the sense that you can completely customize and design them to capture exactly the information you need. Dynamic forms can be used to collect an even more comprehensive set of data and information about your current environment that you possibly might not be able to capture from static data sources. Understanding how the users interact with a certain app, such as accessibility settings, or maybe how to manage sensitive data and the type of data and whether it is marked with some form of official classification and therefore it needs to be dealt in a different way. One of my favourite questions to ask is where to find the installation media for a particular app and if there are any particular configuration details an app requires. These are all things that only the users of the application are likely to be able to answer, and where Management Studio can provide a platform to go collect this information. All this information is collated centrally for the project teams to read and include as an overall part of the transformation process. So just to finish up, remember back earlier in this section I mentioned the fact that directory services typically might not have some fields such as the user location or contact details added. Well, I've just described how Management Studio enables you to go and collect this information, but it can go a whole step further. If you allow it to, Management Studio can actually update your directory services, of course, if you allow it to. We've talked a lot about the sheer volume of data you could capture, but it's not the quantity that is important, it's the quality. I think the saying goes something along the lines of knowledge is power, and while I totally agree with that saying, I would take it a step further and actually say specific and relevant knowledge is power. After all, there's no point knowing lots about stuff that you don't really need to know about, unless you regularly want to partake in pub quizzes, that is. So what's my point? The point I'm trying to make here is there's no point in collecting and storing irrelevant information and data, and that's true for Management Studio. For example, if you have groups of users that are always going to be out of scope for any given project, don't collect data on them. Only capture what you need, perhaps machine accounts within the organisation, or a particular group of machines that you don't manage. Either way, you can control what is and what is not captured by excluding them from the data capture, right down to individual information fields. For example, you might just want the username and not the job title or department. And this isn't a one-hit wonder either. Any data that gets updated at source, Active Directory for example, can be, if you enable the feature, be automatically updated in Management Studio too. You want to create a project baseline from where any and every project can start from, without having to go back to the start and do the whole capture process over again just because you started a new project. So that brings me to the end of this second video. And you'll see that when it comes to capturing information about your current environment to help deliver your transformation projects, Management Studio is your new best friend. I will leave you with one thought that has become apparent while I've been recording the reviews of the Management Studio solution, and that is given how continuously and automatically it captures and rationalises information. It is far more than just a project management solution or a spreadsheet. It enables transformation as a process, delivering continual improvement, managing the entire life cycle of your environment and making recommendations for future application upgrades and migrations. So what next? In the coming weeks I'm going to record another video that will describe the next of the 4 C's, and that's control, and how that plays its part in the successful delivery of the transformation. Follow Management Studio on LinkedIn, or go over to the website and find more information about the entire solution. So that brings us to a close, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope to see you for the next one. Many thanks.